If you've ever held XRP, watched its price swing, followed Ripple in the news, or even just considered what role cryptocurrencies might play in the future of finance, then this conversation is for you. Because right now, a perfect storm is forming. A convergence of legal clarity, technological adoption, and global economic restructuring is placing XRP directly at the center of one of the most pivotal moments in digital currency history. This isn't just about a price prediction. It's about understanding what XRP really is, where it's going, and why its long-running lawsuit with the SEC could soon be over. And when it is, everything could change. Let's begin with a question on every XRP holder's mind. What could 1,000 XRP be worth in 2026? That number 1,000 is symbolic. It's not a massive bag, but it's not insignificant either. It's just enough that if the stars align, it could be life-changing. But to understand where we might be going, we first need to understand the context that's brought us to this moment. And that starts with the lawsuit. In December 2020, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission dropped a bombshell lawsuit on Ripple Labs, alleging that the company conducted unregistered securities offerings by selling XRP. The crux of the argument was this: the SEC believed that XRP was a security, much like a stock, and that Ripple had failed to register it before offering it to investors. That lawsuit sent shockwaves through the crypto space. Overnight, XRP was delisted from major exchanges and its price plummeted. Retail investors panicked. Institutional investors backed off. Uncertainty clouded the entire project. For a while, it seemed like XRP might never recover. But Ripple wasn't about to roll over. Armed with experienced legal counsel and confident in its case, Ripple pushed back, arguing that XRP is not a security, it's a currency, a bridge asset, a utility token designed for fast, low-cost, cross-border payments. And not only did Ripple fight back, they built partnerships around the world. While the lawsuit dragged on in U.S. courts, Ripple expanded its presence globally. Banks in Asia, fintech firms in Europe, and even central banks in the Middle East began exploring RippleNet for settlement solutions. XRP continued to find use and value outside the U.S. Meanwhile, the SEC was facing growing criticism for its approach to digital assets. High-profile losses in other legal battles, including ones with Coinbase and Grayscale, began to undermine the Commission's authority. Lawmakers began calling for clearer legislation, and crypto, once considered a Wild West, began finding pathways to legitimacy. In July 2023, the tide shifted dramatically. Judge Annalisa Torres ruled that XRP, when sold on public exchanges to retail buyers, does not constitute a securities transaction. This was a monumental moment not just for Ripple but for crypto as a whole. Suddenly, the core of the SEC's argument was eroded. XRP surged in price. Major exchanges like Coinbase, Binance US, and Kraken relisted XRP. Momentum returned. Confidence was restored. But the lawsuit wasn't fully over. The court continued to examine Ripple's institutional sales to investors, venture capital firms, and early backers. The SEC argued that these sales may still qualify as securities offerings, and thus should be subject to regulation. That's where things currently stand, mid-2025. But according to multiple sources, including court documents, legal analysts, and Ripple's own executives, a resolution is near. There are whispers of an upcoming settlement. Others suggest we may soon see a final ruling that could close this chapter for good. And that brings us back to the price of XRP and what it could be in 2026. Let's imagine three possible futures. In the first, XRP continues on its current path. The lawsuit settles, but there's no massive breakthrough. Ripple continues to grow globally, but U.S. institutions remain slow to adopt. In this world, XRP performs steadily. Its utility increases, its volume rises modestly, and its price climbs gradually to somewhere around $1.50 to $2. In this case, 1,000 XRP would be worth around $1,500 to $2,000, not bad, especially for those who bought in cheap. It outpaces inflation. It beats the stock market, but it's not a windfall, it's solid, slow growth. A conservative, realistic outcome that many investors would still be happy with. But let's push a little further. In our second scenario, the lawsuit ends in Ripple's favor. The court rules decisively that XRP is not a security, not for institutions, not for retail, not for anyone. This opens the floodgates. Exchanges expand access. Banks begin integrating XRP-based settlement solutions. U.S. institutions that were once hesitant now dive in with the full backing of legal clarity. Ripple itself goes public. An IPO launches on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ, attracting billions in investment. Wall Street funds like BlackRock and Fidelity take positions. XRP is integrated into banking apps, neobanks, and payment rails. It becomes a legitimate part of the U.S. financial ecosystem. In this world, demand spikes. Liquidity increases. Scarcity kicks in. And price? It surges. We could see XRP trading between $5 and $10. That would put 1,000 XRP at a value of $5,000 to $10,000. That's a used car, a wedding, a significant emergency fund, all from 1,000 digital coins that just a few years ago were worth pennies. But there's a third future one that's bold, dramatic, and not entirely out of reach. In this scenario, XRP doesn't just win the lawsuit. It becomes a cornerstone of a new financial system. Imagine a world where cross-border payments are instant and costless, where banks in Japan settle with banks in Brazil in seconds, where CBDCs issued by governments are transferred using RippleNet rails and XRP as the bridge asset, where every real-world asset, stocks, real estate, carbon credits, supply chain inventories is tokenized and moved across borders using XRP. And XRP, with its fixed supply, becomes more than a token. It becomes infrastructure. In this world, demand for XRP is massive. The circulating supply is limited. Exchanges, banks, and institutions all need it to move value. XRP hits $25, then $40, then $50. And those 1,000 coins? Suddenly they're worth $25,000, $40,000, maybe even $50,000. That's not just profit. That's life-changing. A new business, a paid-off mortgage, an early retirement, a college fund. And the beauty of it all? It's not based on hype. It's based on utility. XRP was designed from day one to be useful, fast, scalable, efficient. It's not a meme coin. It's not built around a mascot or a joke. It's built around solving a real problem: cross-border liquidity. And that problem is worth trillions. The legal clarity coming from this lawsuit could be the trigger that sets it all in motion. With the lawsuit resolved, Ripple can expand in the US without fear. Institutions can hold XRP with confidence. Developers can build on the XRP ledger without worrying about compliance. Liquidity corridors can open, and for the first time in its history, XRP can operate in a world that finally understands what it is and what it isn't. This isn't to say there won't be volatility. There will be. Crypto markets are still maturing. Regulation is still evolving. Macro events, recessions, inflation, geopolitical tensions will all play a role. But the difference now is that XRP has proven its resilience. It survived a delisting, it survived regulatory pressure, it survived public doubt, and it came out the other side stronger, more adopted, and more understood. Today, holding XRP isn't just a bet on price, it's a bet on progress, on utility, on the global financial system catching up to the technology that's already here. Whether it goes to $2, $10, or $50, XRP has cemented itself as more than just a coin. It's a statement, a declaration that real utility matters, that solving real problems creates real value, and that sometimes the biggest winners are the ones that weather the longest storms. So the question remains, what will your 1,000 XRP be worth in 2026? The answer depends on how the world responds to the clarity that's coming. It depends on how quickly institutions move, how broadly Ripple expands, and how many people wake up to what XRP has quietly become. One thing's certain: change is coming, regulatory clarity is coming, institutional adoption is coming, and the people who will benefit the most are the ones who saw it before everyone else did, the ones who held when others panicked, the ones who understood that this was never about a pump, it was about a shift. Because XRP isn't going away, it's growing, it's evolving. And in 2026, your 1000 XRP might just be the smartest decision you ever made.